Thus, let and hashtag 039s begin with the yield pressure here. 20-year hit of more than 5% in addition to a rising currency. I believe the fundamental issue we are facing at the moment is the 10-year outlook, which is roughly 4.75%, which will put a lot of pressure on IT. How does this setup cause tech stocks to rise? There are two things going on, in my opinion. In terms of AI capital expenditure use cases, I mean one basically. We and hashtag 039, re-observing that the enterprise side was stronger than the consumer side. In fact, it and hashtag 039s better than anticipated. And in terms of profits, I believe we and hashtag 039 observe that throughout the course of next month. It and hashtag 039s obvious they and hashtag 039 re-watching. In terms of the 10-year bond risk-off, we have experienced this in the past few years. These moments are inevitable. However, we believe that these are the chances to own the winners. Additionally, the basic instances are played there. Look, Frank, I believe that this tech bull market is barely halfway over. Okay. We and hashtag 039 re just halfway done. I would like to discuss Palantir with you. When under pressure, that is in your top 10 choices. Once more, we have witnessed a sell-off in the stock under pressure, even though it was the S&Amp wink with tongue sticking out and hashtag 039's top-performing stock the previous year. Like a lot of other people, are you worried about the valuation? They just think that the company would have a very hard time living up to the high valuation and that it is too high. Yes, I believe that if you only focus on valuation, you have missed all of the revolutionary technological advancements of the past 20 years. I still believe that Palantir will be the next Salesforce or Oracle. Regarding the AI revolution, let and hashtag 039s talk about the numbers. Over the next 3 years, there will be 2 trillion AI catbacks. We and hashtag 039 re going to have these kinds of white-knuckle moments as it unfolds, in my opinion, where Karp and Palin end up. However, as time goes on, I believe this stock could end up being worth 3 figures. In the end, though, you look at the winners and how to own them during these periods. Okay. As you are aware, I have previously discussed this topic. The dollar and hashtag 039s increase. I am examining a 1-week dollar chart. It has increased by almost 1.5%. When it comes to currency, these are amazing movements. Although there was a rise following the jobs news, the market was still rising last week as a whole. I am aware of your tech optimism. You and hashtag 039 re consistently optimistic. You offered us your top 10, just to be fair. Which of these 10 companies, in your opinion, are most likely to be impacted by the dollar and hashtag 039s increase because of their foreign-based revenue? Yes, Microsoft and Oracle are most likely 1 and 2 in terms of those that are publicly available. It and hashtag 039s certain that Apple will have some challenges as well. Look, I believe that some of that is already taken into account when making estimates. If we do eventually begin to see this curtail, I Don and hashtag 039, he think it gets that dramatic. However, it must be the engine that propels it ahead. Do you think the tech trade will continue to be impacted if the Fed remains hawkish at its upcoming meeting later this month? Because, despite the fact that we refer to these companies as defensive due to their infallible cash holdings and other factors, it appears to be the turning point, even for the tech trade. Yes, and that and hashtag 039s also why you have a varied perspective on companies like Microsoft, Oracle, and some of the more rapidly growing ones like Tesla, Tierra, and Pound. Take a look. There will be a headwind. However, our strategy over the past few years has been to take advantage of these chances to own the winners. And for that reason, I believe the bears will emerge at this very moment. The bond market will eventually rule for the next 10 years. However, the tech bull market is still only 50% over. I still think tech stocks are up 25% this year because of this. We see this as a chance rather than a moment to use the elevator and eventually go. Thus, it goes beyond the basics. It has to do with sentiment as well. Thus, the market is being driven by them. In your opinion, which of these earnings reports should we observe in order to gauge sentiment? Which one will actually tell us where the tech trade stands in terms of investors and hashtag 039, perceptions of their confidence in the AI trade and the bull market moving forward? Yes, I believe Microsoft because I believe that Nvidia will continue to in the end, it and hashtag 039, the stock that has also been under pressure, and those are maybe the strongest indicators of what we and hashtag 039, seeing with AI. You know, and then you look at Apple because, at the moment, Apple is under a lot of pressure to demonstrate what we and hashtag 039, going to see, particularly with regard to the Zuck you referenced, whether it and hashtag 039, through downgrades or Zuck itself. We would like to play a soundbite from Zuck and hashtag 039, appearance on the Joe Rogan show on Apple. We will perform it. Please give me your tape. The good news about the tech business is that it and hashtag 039, really dynamic and things are always being invented, even though they haven and hashtag 039, been releasing many novel products due to their poor performance. Additionally, I believe that businesses will notice if you simply don and hashtag 039, perform well. After 10 years, someone will simply defeat you. Well, your opinion of Mark Zuckerberg is quite aggressive. Ever since he began taking MMA classes, it seems like he and hashtag 039, a different person, wearing a chain, and doing something else. However, do you genuinely believe he has a point about Apple and their innovation? Here, we and hashtag 039, witnessing a sort of Game of Thrones between Apple, Meta, and, I believe, the rest of the tech industry. Cook and Apple are engaged in an MMA struggle about 30% of the commission and what they and hashtag 039, taking. Because of where we and hashtag 039, heading, it and hashtag 039, frustrating from Meta and hashtag 039, point of view, but as we and hashtag 039, discussed, it appears that Apple has to not only innovate this year but also demonstrate that the consumer AI revolution exists within Apple. I believe Zuckerberg was aware of that. The stock was reaching all-time highs at $153 per share a week ago. In addition to the 170% gains in 2024, we also retreated roughly 13% from those levels. The Biden administration and hashtag 039, new limits on the sale of AI and high-tech processors, particularly to China at this time, are partly to blame for today and hashtag 039, weakness. As a result, this stock is under more pressure today following a roughly 6% decline last week. Additionally, HSBC announced a decreased price objective of 185 from 195, which may have had a negative impact on the stock today. Additionally, they claim that Nvidia will have little opportunity for a beat and increase in the first half of 2026 due to the supply chain ramp-up overhang. Perhaps that is also exerting pressure on the stock. According to CEO Jensen Huang and hashtag 039, remarks at his CES presentation a week ago, however, he was quite enthusiastic. Although they have experienced some supply chain problems, demand for the Blackwell chip, which they have already begun shipping, still exceeds supply. Therefore, that could be an issue when it comes to their wages. Additionally, they won and hashtag 039, start making money until the middle of February. So remember that. However, there was some bearish activity. There has been a lot of call action today. While some bulls are purchasing calls during this decline, the 130 strike puts from the February monthly cycle caught my attention. 10,000 of those were purchased by the trader, who paid an average debit of almost $6.80. For the following 39 days, that break-even point is 123.20. It is roughly 7% less than Nvidia and hashtag 039's current share price. This one kind of stood out to me because you and hashtag 039, going to capture that earnings event here, even though we usually see a lot of call activity in Nvidia on a daily basis, whether the stock is up or down. And since those record highs, Nvidia has been under constant pressure. Only a week ago. Yes, and as you can see, both bulls and bears are profitable. The pigs are also overly avaricious. But that and hashtag 039's the bearish side of things, essentially. And we and hashtag 039v seen things drop more than 10% from the peak steer position in corrective area. In fact, you stated 13%. How does Palantir compare? Mostly the same. In a relatively short time, that has dropped from about $85 to $63 in value. I and hashtag 039 am curious to see the commerce you discovered there. Yes, that builds upon the 340% gains we witnessed in 2024. In Palantir, there may be some profit-taking, then. Although their value is being stretched in this name, their most recent quarterly results show that they were actually rather respectable as far as growth stocks go. In addition to the 4% decline we and hashtag 039 re-witnessing today, the stock has lost almost 14% so far this year, indicating that it and hashtag 039's still stretched. Catalyst for this stock. The commercial aspect of their firm has grown significantly. In the past, they relied on their contracts with the government and the Department of Defense. However, they have already begun to grow to the point where almost half of their revenue comes from the commercial side of their firm. In recent weeks, this stock has been the subject of some unfavorable analyst criticism. Despite this, Morgan Stanley just started covering the stock with an underweight rating. Deutsche Bank released a statement. They gave it a sell rating and set a price target of $35, which is almost half of its present value.